Hello everybody, welcome. I'm in one of my favorite places, the San Francisco Botanical Garden. This is where I make most of my videos. I used to make them at home. For many years I was trapped in my home. Not too many people know this, though some of the people who are close with me do. Yeah, for more than a decade, I love the different sounds of the wings of birds. The larger birds, we can hear the sounds of their wings. The ravens and the geese can hear the pulse of the air against their feathers. It's a beautiful sound. Yeah, for many years I was trapped in my home due to an injury. It was a terrible experience, although I tried to make the best of it. I've had a lot of experience of extremely challenging and painful things in my life. Having more of that now. Don't know if it's reasonable to go into detail, but I've had a really bad roommate for almost 20 years. And this guy is just a nightmare in lots of different ways, and poses a serious threat to my well-being, safety, and peace of mind pretty much at all times. But now he's doing something really malignant. You know, right now, in this time, a lot of strange things are going on. And it's as if, I've spoken of this before, but it's as if there's some weird sort of aspect of the zeitgeist, the time spirit, where historical things are being thrown up sort of on the shore of the now to be dealt with in various ways. It's some kind of resembles a kind of purging. And many people are in great suffering. They've lost their jobs, their homes, family members, their health. Many of them are alone, have no one to turn to, or no way to get actual assistance in the situations they are facing. This is familiar to me as well. There's not really anything I can do about my malignant roommate and the situations that have plagued my mind and heart for the most of the 20 years he's been there. But the thing that he's about to do is especially vicious. And what I really need is to leave this place, but there are many reasons why that's not been a realistic possibility for me for a long, long time. I need a sanctuary. I think I've lost hope that anything like that is likely to emerge in my world. Though it's possible. Perhaps in some way I'm making a call for help here, now. Though I certainly don't expect that among the 20 or so people that watch my videos, there's someone who can give me a home. No, probably I'll continue on in the dire situations I face here until they exhaust me. But I don't know. Hope is a strange thing, you know. It's delicate. It can be destroyed. Repeatedly suffering traumatic experiences without resolution or transformation wears down our bodies and spirit, minds, relationships, abilities. Over time, eventually, many of us sort of wither, right? Our resilience dries up and dissipates. I'm not completely without any remaining resilience, but the past 20 years have been very painful, grueling at times, lonely, harsh, confusing, threatening, kind of hopeless. Now, of course, I've spoken in previous videos about the fragrance here is really intense. It must be these folks here, I'm pretty sure. Yep. What are these? Well, yes, what are things? You know, normally when we ask the question, you know, what are these? What we mean is not really what are they, but what are they called? It's a very different thing from what they are. What are they called? Yeah. If any of us were to understand what they actually are, I think it would obliterate the entire history of human knowledge. Because what they are is something so astonishing, miraculous, and unimaginable that if it were to enter our minds at all, it would ruin the lexicons that previously dwelt there and reestablish them on the basis of something like true knowledge. It's not inconceivable that we may taste true knowledge, but in ordinary human lives it's very rare, or at least its scope is quite limited, or specifically limited to certain kinds of experience. For example, the experience of kissing. There's a kind of true nonverbal knowledge there, or eating food, or feeling the sense of the spirit of the day. But these are not so much like knowledge. Knowledge is more, for humans, it's more like a product of the departure of experience into representation and codification, naming things. I was curious what those plants were named, but when I realized their name won't help me know what they actually are, then my path changed, right? And I was like, okay, the name, it doesn't really matter. Though I have a friend who's a docent here, and for her the names matter. And, you know, to some degree they matter to me as well. I mean, I'm interested in the catalogs, but I'm constantly aware of this problem where our initial fascination with something can be dismissed simply by learning what it's called, because we confuse that that experience of nomenclature, maybe particularly the Latinate nomenclature, with knowledge of the entity, the plant, the animal, the living place, the human being, the cohort. We confuse that linguistic token with what would previously have been knowledge. And so in older cultures, there are stories about the plants and the animals and how they relate with each other and how they relate with the living places in which they dwell and how they relate with the humans and how the humans relate with them. And these stories seem to many people to resemble superstitions. But nothing is as superstitious as believing that the calla lily is a calla lily. There's nothing as superstitious as believing that once we know the name, we know the identity of something. Because the name has nothing to do with the identity. Zero. Stories had much more to do with identities than names do. As much as I love the jays, I have to admit I'm going to birdwalk for a moment. The Stellar's jays can become quite annoying and insistent once they realize that I have food. I wonder what's going on down there. I should go down there and have a look, see at what's changed down there. Maybe I will. I've been overwhelmed both by the struggles in my ordinary existence and particularly the issues surrounding the long conflict with my roommate, Charles Birch. What an incredible pain that person has brought into my life over and over and over again. And yet superficially he seems entirely, you know, like no problem. It's not reasonable for me to tell the story here, so I won't. Yeah, here's one of the Stellar's jays. I particularly do not want it to follow me into the terrain of other birds where it becomes a serious problem. So this area used to be a nursery. I've had a few adventures here. This wood came from trees that used to grow near the other nursery, which they chopped down to make room for a new structure, which I think really they shouldn't be building inside the garden, because the garden shouldn't be filled with structures. It's not meant for that. It's meant as a sanctuary for plants and animals and humans. See, this guy's a problem, and I don't know what to do about the problem. I like these birds, and I'm friendly with them, but they don't respect terrain boundaries the way that other birds usually do. And of course, it's up to other birds to enforce such boundaries. And if I feed this bird, it will follow me. If I don't feed it, it'll probably still follow me. I've had conversations with it, or at least with its kind. I can't always tell each bird. I've tried to communicate to it that I don't want it to follow me into this terrain, or again, to other stellar jays like this. The ones I originally communicated with seemed to understand very clearly what I was asking and did not follow me into the terrain. This one, however, is more of a problem. I think it'll follow me. You know, I've made many videos about working with trouble in our lives and how in the times of greatest trouble there's a profound opportunity, and it's true, or at least it's true in theory. It's generally true. Whether or not and to what degree we might take advantage of such opportunities depends on many factors. Not all of them seem to me to be matters of will, choice, practice, dedication, awareness. Some of them are. But there are also situations that actually just destroy us, right? Just ruin what might be left of our lives. Or obliterate our lives themselves, you know, illness, accident, violence, disease. And in these cases, there's still some kind of opportunity for development. The enrichment of our lives or souls or relationships. Because, for example, endings transform histories. Even if someone is just killed outright in an unexpected accident or moment of violence or by an illness, that ending echoes backward in time, transforming previous relationships. So it's interesting, that bird did not follow me. I mean, I took a specific path that makes it a bit difficult to follow me, but I'm surprised. Perhaps it was listening. Nope, there it is. It did follow me. That reminds me of when I think I've evaded a problem in my life and then poof, it just comes right back. Yeah. And often, you know, in my problems, I have some hand in their origination. It's not explicitly true. It's not always true, but it's often true. For example, you know, I made an agreement with this roommate guy, which he never really kept. I made an agreement in good faith. He decided to manipulate the terms of that agreement in the ways that he could, since it was not in writing. And he's been doing that for a long time. So, you know, I had the chance to say I don't want this person in my life in the beginning, but I believed that the agreement would allow me to choose my future, and whether, you know, if either of us wanted to dissolve the agreement, we could, because that was the agreement. That's not how it turned out. I've been unable to dissolve the agreement. He clings in my home like a parasite, in my life like a terrible disease that torments me constantly. And I can't get rid of him. So what are the opportunities there for growth or transformation? Now, these are the birds that I adore. And these are the ones who I don't want to be troubled by the intrusion of the Stellar's jays. I'll not put them on the camera because I want to protect them. But even in very dire cases, there's an opening for insight and awareness. There's a place in the darkness where very subtle lights can be seen that are otherwise invisible, just as in a place where there's little or no light pollution, we can see the stars in the sky. Except these lights are not stars in the sky, they are stars in the constellations of our souls. And I think our souls are a bit like constellations. They're not merely local possessions, they're patterns in relation over time. Our ancestors, the world, the living places, the living creatures, the living beings, our family, those beings who have even a very momentary but deep effect on our hearts. Pets and gardens. Trees and lakes and rivers. Mountains and meadows and forests. All of these things and more. Even the traumas we suffer have some place in these constellations. They transform us. We are changed by them. When I was young, one day at the beach, I was stung or bitten by a yellow jacket, and it was a very traumatic experience. Not because I was allergic, but because I got blood poisoning from the sting or bite. Yellow jackets can both bite and sting. Another time in my grandmother's backyard, a wasp flew into my ear and stung me inside my ear. Wow, that was painful. Very few things were as painful as whatever happened with the yellow jacket. It felt like somebody hammered a red-hot railroad spike into my arm and then just kept it hot for the next day and a half. And then it slowly started to settle out. And I was very, very sick, and my arm turned kind of purplish. I was sick for a long time. Another time when I was maybe a little past my 18th birthday. I woke one morning with terrible sore throat and fever, and I was so sick that I couldn't move at all. Like, I couldn't move my hand. That time I had sepsis. Survived it. There were times when as a runaway, I was hitchhiking. And there were probably situations where I was in great danger and didn't really know. But there were a few situations where it was blatantly obvious that I was in danger. I used to stay in a house in Duncan's Mills on Freeze Out Road. That house is long gone. Years later, I ran into a realtor in my work at Computerland, and he knew of the house and told me that it had been burned down ostensibly in an arson event that was engineered to gain in the insurance money. Someone's playing a drum kit over there. It's hard to find a place to play in the city where it doesn't disturb everyone. Anyway, yeah, I used to live in this house out on Freeze Out Road. Well, or rather, I slept in a tiny attic room. It was probably smaller than, I don't know, maybe it was 6 by 5. At the apex, right, of the ceiling, yeah, at the point of the ceiling. A tiny little stained glass window in there. Used to be freezing cold in that room. I'd wake up with ice on my nose. It was just a little storage room, but you walked into a closet in the living room and there was a ladder that went up to this room, and that's where I would sleep. And one night, I was probably 14 at the time. I was hitchhiking out there at 2 in the morning, and a man picked me up and tried to talk me into going to the ocean with him. He passed my stop and became silent. He wouldn't respond to me when I told him to pull the car over. So eventually, I had a dagger that I used to keep in a wrist sheath. I called it Sting. And I pulled it out and told him I would stab him right now, even if it meant we were going to crash unless he pulled the car over. In a very fierce way, I said this. And he pulled the car over, and I got out and walked home. Another time in Guerneville, I was hitchhiking in a Ford truck with a camper shell. The little shells, not like, the ones that are the same height as the hood. These little insects are very fascinating to me. I first discovered them about, was it last summer? Probably last summer. Never seen them before. They appear to run backwards, although they don't. It's a guise. They have a false face on the other side of their body. So yeah, this truck pulled over. It was evening. It was dark. It was between Guerneville and Monterey. Had a shell. I walked up to the passenger side door. Window was open. I was looking down the barrel of a sawed-off shotgun. The guy was pointing at my face and he said, "Get in, boy." So I did. In that situation, I managed to talk my way out of the problem. I knew people he knew. My mom was dating the sheriff of Guerneville at the time. I managed to make it clear that it would be unlikely that he'd get away with whatever it was he was thinking about doing, which he did detail to me. And which wasn't very good, and which I probably wouldn't have survived. I don't know, I probably hitchhiked. I probably got 2,000 or 3,000 rides while I was a runaway. I was a pretty small kid, had very long hair, was a good-looking kid. And in the area where I lived, there were 3 primary factions. There were the hippies, the rednecks, and the gay people. The hippies and the gay people got along fine. The rednecks hated both the hippies and the gay people, but probably, I don't know which one more, maybe the gay people more. Yeah, rednecks seem to think something like that homosexuality is contagious or something. I don't know, it's pretty bizarre. I got along with pretty much everybody myself. But I had a few encounters with rednecks that were pretty serious, and a few encounters with other factions that were relatively problematical. But the whole time I lived on the street, no one ever did me any serious physical harm. I was never punched or raped or, really, I was never really mistreated much at all. Though a lot of my friends died or disappeared or became heroin addicts or, I was able to rejoin society, which is a very unusual thing for a kid who goes through something like that. So, in that darkness there were lights. Some of them are still with me in my heart. But sometimes our darkness is so overwhelming that we can't sense anything good or any hope at all. And we feel despair and hopelessness and helplessness. And we cry out for help and nothing comes. No one comes. We cry out for healing and we don't heal. We get worse. Things get worse. It's very difficult in these moments to be human. Life becomes nightmare-like. And we can't wake up because there's no place to go, there's no answer, there's no solution, there's no savior. So what then? What then? What about when there is no bright star shining in the darkness? What about when the darkness overwhelms and consumes us? What about when we just keep falling and nothing slows our descent, and we know at the bottom there are the rocks and we will be crushed, destroyed? What about this? Yeah. What about this? In these situations, if we are experiencing them directly, personally, there is no sage wisdom that will break through the darkness to help us. Short of some kind of miraculous rescue, all that we are and have been will be lost. Perhaps destroyed, consumed, obliterated. I remember one day I came here and I was making a video. And there's a big blue plastic barrel, was standing in that nursery place that I was filming earlier. And I had my microphone on and I wasn't sure if it was capturing the sound properly, so I went to one of the little tables in there and set my equipment down for a moment while continuing to film the video. And the big blue barrel was standing next to me. Blue plastic barrel. And I noticed there was a beautiful hawk feather behind the barrel, and I thought I might take it with me when I finished adjusting my gear. So I took the microphone out and continued making the video. And then I decided to look inside the barrel. And inside the barrel, which was about a third full of water, so maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet of water in the barrel. In the water was the corpse of a hawk. That barrel used to be over here. It's probably been taken somewhere else now. I came over here to see if I could find it. Hawk was a fledgling, and the fledgling hawks have their nervous systems not being fully developed. There's a conflict between two different possibilities of what they can do with their bodies. So essentially, they first become very good at grasping, and then in order to fly, they have to let go. This is a beautiful analogy. They can't grasp and fly, obviously, right? So if you're grasping a branch, you can flap your wings all you want. It won't help you. You have to let go. So in their early developmental phases, these two behaviors or activities conflict in their nervous system so that they cannot both grasp and try to fly. And this is a problem when they first capture prey, because they have to grasp the prey and fly into, lift it up. fly away with it to take it to a place where it can be safely consumed. So this Cooper's hawk, it flew up to the edge of that barrel, which was too thin for it to get a grip on at all. There's not really any surface like that in nature, the circular, very thin plastic surface of the top of the barrel. So the hawk could not grip that surface, and while trying to grip it, it could not fly. It fell into the barrel, was trapped there, and drowned. No one came to save it. Nothing could help that hawk. It was destroyed by the ignorance of humans and the way they make bizarre situations that otherwise could never exist in nature. So the hawk had no way to negotiate with that situation, and it was killed by it. The average human would not look at a tall blue bucket about the size of a garbage can, maybe a bit taller though, another foot taller, and think that a hawk could die in there. And in fact, it took me a long time to figure out how that had taken place. It was a mystery when I first encountered it. A terrible tragedy. It broke my heart. I couldn't save the hawk. But you see, this tragedy is part of the constellation of my own soul. I could not save the hawk. But I did remove it from the barrel, simply because I knew that its last desire was just to get back to the sky, to be out of this terrible, nonsensical trap. And I relate with that hawk in my own way, because in many ways my home and this place have been much like that. A terrible trap that I cannot escape. And rather than killing me outright, it just eats me slowly, agonizingly. I tried for so many years to get out of this trap and could not make it. Now perhaps it is too late. It certainly seems that it is. But I will continue to try to learn and grow and help others, and to try to fulfill some of the promise of my human incarnation in my day-to-day life, however limited or simple it may be. And there are still some beautiful moments, even if the overall chapter is quite grim or dire. But yes, when things are truly dark, sometimes there's nothing to be done. And perhaps, some of us will fight in these times. Some of us will struggle in our bondage, whatever's binding us, and others we will surrender. And, we will not rage against the dying of the light. We will drift away into the darkness, each according to their nature, their spirit, their history, their life path. I like to think that there's always hope, and it's always possible to make a beautiful choice, even in a very grim situation. And it's a beautiful thought, but it's not always true. And sometimes it may be required or appropriate that we ourselves become vicious and return injury for injury, rather than accepting damage from others. Oh, this is so weird. Without responding violently. These are the white raspberries. They are good. They are really good. Wow. They're much sweeter than regular raspberries and less tart. And it's funny how they have a flavor that is generally consistent berry to berry, but each one of them is unique, more than a little bit unique. I've always been a pretty gentle person. It's very difficult to make me angry. Usually someone has to do something extremely egregious, or my video got interrupted. What I was saying was, it's ordinarily very difficult to make me angry. Someone has to do something extremely egregious or be hurting me or threatening me for a long, long time before I become angry. And even then, I'm not violent. I might yell and make noises. Very uncommon that I'm, have anything to do with any kind of violence. By very uncommon, I mean like almost never, nearly never, never in my adult life. But there are situations that could catalyze those feelings or that kind of behavior. I would certainly act to defend someone that I loved. But usually it's easier to step down conflict than to engage it with violence. At least it always has been in my life. I think many people find that idea ridiculous, especially if they've been in many fights, and I know some people who have, and some people who are close to me that have. But yeah, that's not really it's not my style. But there are situations where I've just been being violated over and over and over again, year after year after year, as in the situation with my roommate, for example, where the pain and the degree and the threat is serious enough that I become very angry, at least. Yet still, we live in a lawful society, for better and worse. It's natural to be angry, and when we've been violated, to protect ourselves in whatever ways are available to us. But even this will not repulse the great darkness of death and destruction that comes to every life. at some point. And sometimes it comes rather gently, and sometimes it comes very abruptly, and sometimes it comes very violently. So I guess in a way I'm reflecting today on the nature of the struggles in our lives that we cannot overcome, that wisdom will not shed light on, that cannot be changed from destruction to rebirth. I have one friend, close friend, who's suffering very profoundly at the moment with a life situation that cannot be resolved. And sometimes he becomes angry at me when I talk with him about the possibilities for improving his day-to-day experience of life rather than allowing it to be destroyed by both his situation and his concerns about it. And sometimes he becomes, kind of angry with me. And also, he thinks from outside my life that I must not be very good at these things, or I would not be suffering as I do. This is not true. And it's not merely a matter of skillfulness or application. But we each come to great difficulty in our own way. And once encompassed by it, we will each respond in the ways, first at least, that are familiar to us, probably. We're unlikely to respond in ways that are unfamiliar to us. So, if you're a fighter, you respond with fight. But lots of dire situations, you can't fight them. There's no way to punch cancer or, you can be treated for cancer, but there's, you can't punch a catastrophic head injury or, the onset of severe depression or, bulimia or anorexia or bipolar disorder. You can't fight. Fighting it won't help you. There are some things that fighting will help, and there are some things that practices can help. But in the jaws of destruction, we can talk about surrender or, resistance. But every time those jaws close, we are crushed. I guess it's a personal choice whether to resist or succumb. And of course, those are not the only two options, but those are the primary polarities. So this is an unfinished meditation on these matters, and it's a personal one because in this time, I am suffering. And I've had plenty of suffering before, but the suffering I have now is not the same kind. It's nearly all-encompassing. And I'm in a trap, maybe a series of traps, that I can't find my way out of, so I'm not sure how the story will continue to unfold. Perhaps future chapters may bring some light or further darkness, or bits of both. Let's see. But I'm also aware of the great unbridled suffering of millions of people around the world, some of them my friends, who are in agony. They've lost parents, family, their homes, their jobs, their futures are unknown. It's a terrifying time in the world. Our societies, to say they are breaking down would be an understatement. They're becoming actively malignant. And this, whether or not people are conscious of it, they are aware of it, and it's a source of despair and conflict and confusion, helplessness, hopelessness, anger, frustration, addiction, loss, pain, suffering. And I feel compassion for the suffering of the living places, the ecologies, the remains of our anciently conserved ecologies, the oceans, the remaining forests and wetlands, rivers, streams, deserts, mountains. It's a grim time. If I take comfort at all, it's in a few things. One is that the darker it gets, the more profound an act of kindness becomes in the scope of its effect and in the brightness that it brings to lives. Even a small act of kindness. This gives me hope. And even though I am suffering and confused and feel despair, I still adore the living world and the beings, all the living beings. So there will be a little time yet for love and celebration, remembrance, renewal, rejuvenation. This I remember today on the first day of this new moon cycle. On the 8th of September, 2021. So thank you for joining me. These are my thoughts for the moment. I look forward to walking and learning together again very soon. May your life be blessed and safe. When you need help, may you find it readily available in the living world and the human world. May those you love be safe. May your dreams be deep and rich. And may we grow and learn together once more very soon.